Hello and welcome to the Friday, December 18th, 2020 edition of On Iowa Politics. I'm James Lynch from the Cedar Rapids Gazette. With me today are Bret Hayworth of the Sioux City Journal. Good morning, Bret.
Good morning, James.
Tom Barton of the Quad City Times. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, James.
Amie Rivers of the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier. Good morning, Amie.
Good morning, James.
And Erin Murphy, Lee Newspapers Statehouse Bureau Chief. Good morning, Erin.
Good morning, James. Good to be here on a very full roster day.
Yeah, we're all here, including Gazette opinion editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
Todd's coming off a stellar performance in Pints and Politics last night.
I haven't read the reviews this morning, so I'll wait till after.
It was all good. It was all good, yeah. You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics wherever you find your podcast. First up, Iowa 2, back on the agenda. More than 6 weeks after, or maybe I should say still on the agenda, more than 6 weeks after the 2020 election, we're still waiting to know the outcome of the open seat race in Iowa's 2nd District. Following the developments in that race, seems like it's become a full-time job for Tom Barton. The votes have been counted and recounted, and Republican Marionette Miller Meeks has 6 more votes than Democrat Rita Hart. Hart has petitioned the U.S. House to determine the winner. The GOP has paused in its defense of President Donald Trump's many challenges of the outcomes of the presidential race to cry foul, saying that Hart should accept the decision of Iowa voters and not seek a solution from Congress. So, Tom, what are the latest developments in Iowa 2?
Well, actually, we still don't have a petition filed yet with the House Committee on Administration. That was expected sometime this week or maybe early next week. But as of yesterday evening, the committee has not received a petition yet from Rita Hart. I believe she has until December 30th to do that. She had 30 days from when the state certified its results, and the state did that on November 30th. But the latest developments earlier this week, Iowa's Republican U.S. senators and newly elected members of the state's congressional delegation sent a letter urging House leaders to reject Hart's pending petition challenging the outcome in that 2nd District race. The letter was signed by Senators Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst and incoming Republican representatives-elect Ashley Hinson and Randy Feenstra, arguing that that granting a petition for a full hand recount of ballots cast in the race would set a dangerous precedent, and that any action to bypass or overturn a fair election conducted according to Iowa law would not be well received by citizens of the state and kind of put a cloud over the results of those efforts. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy on Twitter yesterday said that if House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tries to overturn the people's vote in the district, that Hart would be viewed as illegitimate. He cited a poll by Republican polling firm Signal that was conducted for American Action Network, a conservative nonprofit DC-based advocacy group. According to their polling of 400 likely voters in Iowa's 2nd District, it found 58% said that if the House voted to overturn the state certified election results, which Miller Meeks put Miller Meeks ahead by just 6 votes, that they would view her as illegitimate member of Congress. Illinois Republican Rodney Davis, who's the ranking member of the House Committee on Administration, has also said that or warned the House that overturning the 2nd District results would set a terrible precedent. Democrats, meanwhile, have argued that with thousands of ballots left unexamined for voter intent that could have been misread by tabulation machines and a dozen more uncounted in the race, including 35 ballots in Scott County that were cast by Iowans living overseas, including military members. Unfortunately, those were not counted in the initial canvass and recount due to a scanning error when they submitted their ballots. It lopped off the 2nd District race. Anyway, Democrats are arguing that Miller Meeks has spent the past few weeks contradicting herself and her previous positions and own legal argument that all legally cast ballots had been counted. Her name was included on a letter from newly elected Republican House members that urged Congress to investigate the 2020 presidential election, citing irregularities, and Democrats pounced on the apparent hypocrisy that Miller Meeks would have the House look into the presidential race with Democrat Joe Biden as a clear winner, but not her own, with it being the closest federal race in the country and the closest congressional race in roughly a century. Miller Meeks' campaign said her name was mistakenly added to the letter and was quickly removed. So that's the latest this week.
So Tom, what's going to happen come January 3rd when members of Congress are supposed to be sworn in? Will Iowa 2 get 2 seats in the House, or will either one of these candidates be sworn in as members of Congress?
Yeah, all indications as of now are that that Marionette Miller Meeks will be sworn in on January 3rd. That's what her campaign has said and continues to say. And we really haven't heard anything from House Democrats to contradict that or suggest that they would block her from being sworn in or seated, although that is a possibility.
Can they make it hard for her by not assigning her an office or giving her a budget or not putting her on any committees? I mean,
yeah. So according to her campaign, she has been assigned an office in the Longworth House office building, and she has been allowed one staff person to help with transition. But is not allowed to hire staff until her swearing in, according to her campaign. And also according to the campaign, committee assignments remain up in the air for freshman members, and assignments are determined by party leadership. So if sworn in, according to her campaign, she will be serving on committees. Now, remember, it was Steve King. It was his party. It was Republican leadership in the House that stripped him of his committee assignments, not Democrats.
Right. Yeah. So sounds like she would be in a better position than King. She would get some committee assignments. But meanwhile, kick this over to the other side of the state in the 4th District and throw this out to Erin and Bret. Incoming Congressman or Congressman-elect Randy Feenstra, who was very reluctant to answer questions before the election, and I guess that didn't prevent him from handily winning Iowa's other open seat race, appeared on Iowa Press this week. Like his predecessor, Steve King, he's another conservative Republican. Is there any difference? Should we expect any difference between Steve King and Randy Feenstra?
Well, I would say that, and I was just kind of going through this. I'm writing a feature on him about, joining the House here in a few weeks and going back, writing up some top 10 lists of, top things that happened with the election and going through that. I saw, a lot of consistency that how Randy Feenstra sold himself on the campaign trail was a pretty traditional kind of pocketbook Republican, Main Street issues, farms, families, and that type of thing. And, the fact that Steve King became not, a distraction and not very able to produce on those issues is why, a lot of Republicans who formerly supported King went to Feenstra. So that's a, that's a selling point for him. And I feel like he's still fairly consistent on that in his recent statements. And I feel like that would be his approach. And he does have a chance to be more effective in some ways because he's not on the outs with leadership in the way that Steve King had been in recent years. It appears, from what I can tell, that he has a good working relationship, or at least the potential for a good working relationship with Kevin McCarthy. And so that, that would accrue to his benefit. So I know that's going to be his approach. And so, there's potential there, although, and maybe I'll hand it off to Erin at this point, but I noticed yesterday on the Iowa Press that he does have a little bit of Steve King in him, in the fact that that Feenstra isn't ready to say that Joe Biden is president yet. And even though the electors voted or did their action. Sorry, missing the
Yeah,
proper usage here on Monday. Until that actually comes to the House, he's not ready to say Biden. Is that right, Erin?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Brett. Although I will say, and to your larger point, that is probably about the only topic on which a Steve King interview and a Randy Feenstra interview would have overlapped. Like you said, he definitely. I loved David Yepsen, the host's question back to him: why can't conservative Republicans just say the words President-elect Joe Biden? It was kind of a fun little moment there, and Randy, to his credit, answered that. But aside from that, you did definitely see the differences, as you noted, Brett. Much more of a pocketbook, Main Street business-minded type Republican, where Steve King definitely leaned far more into the social type issues. So that contrast was clear yesterday as we taped that show, which will be airing on Iowa PBS this weekend. The other thing I wanted to throw in there, to your point, James, that it was interesting to me to see Congressman-elect Feenstra during that interview, because, as you noted, he didn't do a lot of interviews, and he didn't specifically do the Iowa. He didn't accept, their campaign didn't accept the Iowa press debate invite, and that was the only federal race in this cycle that the Iowa press wasn't able to do a debate for, because the Feenstra campaign declined. I don't know what they were afraid of. I look at campaigns don't give a single hoot what I think, and I acknowledge that. But just for what it's worth, from my perspective, I thought Congressman-elect Feenstra was very good on the show, and viewers can tune in over the weekend and see it, that make the judgment for themselves. But I thought he was good and well spoken. I don't know, frankly, what they were nervous about. I based on what I saw yesterday, I suspect Randy Feenstra would have been fine during a 4th district debate. So it's too bad that the voters didn't get a chance to see that.
Brett, are you concerned at all that Randy Feenstra is not going to be as much fun to cover as Steve King has been?
I got to think about how I want to say this.
Yes.
So I came to the Journal in September 2002, right in the middle of that election cycle, with like 2 or 3 months left to go. And Steve King was looking to be moving from a state senator to the U.S. House. And I always phrase it that my career has overlapped completely with Steve King's career for 18 years. And the thing what I will say is I keep thinking this, and I keep thinking that I should make this into a column or something, but I can't believe I outlasted Steve King. I thought he was going to be congressman for life. Maybe outlasted is not the right word, but that my tenure at the Journal is going to extend longer than what his time in the U.S. House. And he has been fascinating to cover, and I've appreciated, so many, things that I've had access to in covering him. But yeah, it's hard to think that era is ending.
You're so diplomatic there, that saying he was fascinating to cover.
Certainly was.
That made me think of something. Speaking of Iowa Press, and I'm gonna have to give credit to both because I can't remember who said it. So it was either David Yepsen or Kay Henderson, who I was on the show with, said something. It was really interesting, and I'd never thought about it before. And Brett, I'd be curious to get your reaction to this. So after we had taped the show and we were talking about Congressman King a little bit too, and either David or Kay said, it's amazing to think that Steve King, for everything he's said and done over the years and all the different times he's gotten himself in hot water, that that finally came to a head, and it finally cost him. And in the era of Donald Trump, like at a time when the party was led by the person who's maybe most like Steve King, that was the moment when Steve King was finally knocked out. I mean, and I'd never thought of it that way before, but that's super interesting. Like at a time when someone most like him was the president and the leader of his party, that's when his cumulative body of work finally caught up to him. I'd never thought of it that way before, and I thought that
Right.
was
And maybe the only, maybe what it was just that narrow loss, the 3% loss, that there was blood in the water, so to speak. And that at that point, all bets were off,
yeah,
Mhm.
without a doubt.
Todd, I want to come around to you, and I guess kind of going back to the second district race. This week, we've heard a lot of calls from editorial page writers about saying it's time that Hart should concede this race, and as Tom told us, people are suggesting that if she is seated, she'll be seen as an illegitimate member of Congress, and this will sort of taint whatever she tries to do, and certainly will come back to haunt her in 2 years when she's running for re-election. If she's seated, should there be a asterisk next to her name?
Well, I mean, I think there obviously will be. I mean, Republicans will make sure of that naturally, because they'll if she is seated, then they'll be coming back after her in 2022 with that as part of their campaign. I mean, I think a lot of this depends on how it plays out. If she ends up winning the seat because they count the legally cast ballots and find clear voter intent in some of those other ballots that haven't been analyzed, then I mean, if that's a transparent process and everybody can see what happened, then maybe it's not as bad as if there's some sort of if this is contested in some way and it's uh, and it looks more like dirty politics than counting all the votes. I mean, that's kind of what it's going to come down to. It's interesting that that there's this delay in filing the petition. Maybe it's not a big deal, but you wonder what sort of conversations are going on behind the scenes as to what the cost benefit analysis is of going through with the House investigation and the recount and all of that, and whether whether there are just diminishing returns on continuing to fight for the seat when it seems like so many people are saying, this should be over now. And so we'll see what Rita Hart does, and if she files the petition and moves forward, it's gonna be a long process. I mean, they're calling for a full hand recount, so that's that could take a while.
If Rita Hart is seated, will Marionette Miller Meeks run for Congress for a fifth time?
Probably. I mean, especially if it looks like she was robbed, that this was stolen from her, then she definitely has a basis for coming back and running again. It's and by the flip side, I mean, will Rita Hart consider running again if she loses by 6 votes? I don't know if that's going to happen, but I guess a rematch is conceivable considering the narrow margin.
Well, in better news, COVID-19 vaccinations have begun in Iowa, and in keeping with the dialing up and dialing down approach in Iowa and much of the nation, there already have been some hiccups in the process. Erin, almost as soon as the vaccinating began, Governor Kim Reynolds and the Iowa Department of Public Health announced that Iowa was getting fewer doses than previously planned. The next day, the federal Department of HHS said no, that wasn't the case. What's going on here? Are we getting vaccinations or are we not?
What's going on here is the question du jour, and I don't know that we have a fantastic answer to that, unfortunately. What we do know, and I say for sure, and I guess I should say for as sure as we can be at the moment, is that the state is now definitely expecting fewer doses than originally projected. The state told us originally they were expecting between the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, they were expecting 172,000 doses in December. that has been reduced to a little more than 130,000. I believe 138,000, somewhere in there, somewhere in the 130,000 is so it's so there's been a slight reduction. What's even less clear still is why that number was reduced, or how it was reduced, or who's responsible for it being reduced. There's a lot of questions and very few answers on that front still the next day. But they have confirmed, as much as that word carries any weight at the current moment, um, that the projection has been lowered. Now that's still a lot, and it's obviously enough to get the ball rolling here with the process. And hospital workers and nursing home residents and staff have been prioritized, so they'll still be getting those. It's just not quite as much as was originally thought, and they kind of maybe seeing what's happened once already and worried about what's to come. The state has cautioned that number could continue to fluctuate in the coming days and weeks. So don't sit on this one for too long either.
Yeah. Wouldn't you like to be the hospital administrator who has to go to a nurse or a janitor and say, "Oh, sorry, we're not getting all the dosages that we were promised, so I guess you're going to have to wait."
Yeah, and that's actually the very real concern is in the nursing home. So they're prioritizing the hospitals within that first batch, and then the nursing homes are next. And there's growing concern that there will be enough now to start getting to those people as early as they had hoped, which was what originally planned to be at the end of this month. Now there's concern that it might be a little longer. We might be into next year before we get to those folks.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, Amie, Iowa's COVID numbers don't seem to be showing significant improvement, but that hasn't stopped the Reynolds administration from dialing back some of her public health restrictions. What's changed to lead her to do that?
I mean, I couldn't all speculate, of course, but basically, cases have been going down. We see, mid-November being our most recent peak. We're still higher than, we were even in May, even in September, as far as cases, but they are on the decline. So I suspect that probably is guiding her, recent relaxation of the restrictions. However, hospitalizations are still kind of steady, if not going down just slightly. Deaths are still up. And the big issue with deaths is that we're just rising higher and higher in deaths by population. I mean, when I was getting the numbers on Monday, we were 20th in the nation, which is a little less than the United States average. And today, when I'm looking at the KFF.org indicator of per capita deaths, we are 12th. So that's a jump of 8 spots in 5 days. As far as deaths, we've now got over 1,000 deaths per million population. So that's a really worrying stat that obviously is a lagging indicator from cases. And if you wait until cases get bad again to shut things down and then simply open them back up when they've started coming down, you're not going to fix that deaths number. That's the big thing. It reminds me of, the people that, are having an issue and then get on a medication or get on some treatment and then get better. And then what do? They think, I don't need this now. I'm better. So it's that sort of like, just hold off on it a little bit more. We've got the vaccine now. It's still coming into itself. It's going to be a few months before everybody gets it. But if we could just hold on for those few months, honestly, we could save a lot of lives.
For what it's worth, I had a face mask to face shield meeting with my doctor this week, and she said that it's probably going to be late spring or summer before everyone gets vaccinated. Of course, we really don't know when we'll get a vaccination because we learned this week, Erin, that decisions about which workers should be given access are being made by a panel meeting in secret, away from nosy news reporters.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, James. Okay. It's so, and this is if you pull back from this, it's kind of the traditional constant debate over government transparency. seems even more important at a moment like this. The so the state created this expert advisory panel, infectious disease specialists, other doctors, other stakeholders that are creating a series of recommendations to then pass along to the governor and the public health department about what is the best way to distribute these first batches of the vaccine while there's still limited supply. So basically, right now and for the next couple of months, while the vaccine's still being rolled out, before we have enough to just give to everybody, as your doctor told you, James, that's what we constantly hear. It's going to be into next spring or even summer before it's widely available enough for everybody to just go get one whenever they want. So until then, how do we distribute the vaccine? Who do we prioritize making this available to? And that's what this group was formed to do, to work through that and make recommendations to the state. What has been troubling to journalists for sure, and hopefully a lot of people, is that this group has been meeting in private. They've been posting minutes of their meetings, but if anyone's ever read minutes, you can basically make those as detailed or as not as you want, and basically put whatever you want in there. And they said they will make their recommendations public, but the process itself, the discussions are being held in private. I will say, as I try to take off my journalist hat, I get the argument to a certain degree. These are incredibly heavy discussions these people are having. If you boil it down, what these folks are saying is, okay, who gets the potentially life-saving vaccine first before this other group of people? We're essentially ranking people as to how important they are to us. That's a tough discussion to have. I get that. Now, that said, transparency in government is always important. The more that a government does its work in view of the public and its constituents, the better it works. And gee, it's just so hard to do it otherwise is not typically a great excuse to not do it that way. And we could get into the whole slippery slope thing too. Well, if this group says that, what's to stop the next group from saying that too? And then pretty much everybody's saying, well, hey, we just can't do this in public. It's too hard. So we're going to hold all our meetings in private. Randy Evans from the Freedom of Information Council, I think, put it best. He said, this is maybe the most important thing our government bodies are doing right now, is working on distribution of this vaccine. And it just really seems like that work should be being done in public.
Yeah, Todd, as journalists, we like to always say that sunlight is the best medicine, and certainly, as Erin talked about, it seems like there's a need for transparency here when a panel is making what really are life and death decisions for some people. This seems unlikely to inspire confidence in the public in the process that's being used here, and the reasoning, the need for a free-flowing dialogue is the same argument that public officials from school boards to the state legislature make for closing meetings. So could there be sort of a backlash here, the lack of confidence in these decisions being made?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really lousy way to inspire public confidence in this vaccine distribution when, I mean, you're already facing a lot of disinformation out there and conspiracy theories and all of these things that are circulating through social media, and then you've got the government making these decisions behind closed doors. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people. And I mean, as Erin said, I get it. These are sensitive, discussions, but it's also these are also incredibly consequential life and death decisions. And to sort of say, well, Iowans, you can go ahead and, watch your planning and zoning commission rezone some ag land at the edge of the city. You can see that, but you can't see this. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, I haven't heard a decent legal argument for why these for why these meetings are closed. I think the argument that's been advanced is pretty shaky. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if it was just they didn't think about this or what they thought was going to happen, but other states are holding open meetings of these type of advisory boards. So, it also is part of a long line of misgivings that we've all had about the Reynolds administration and, delivering correct data and showing us the models and the methods that they're using for making decisions and all of these things that have sort of been hidden from public view. And now the board that's deciding who's going to get vaccines and when is meeting in secret. It's just the whole package doesn't pass the smell test. So I really think they should reconsider this and have these deliberations, in the sunlight, as you say.
Yeah, it's all about the metrics, but we're going to keep those secret. Trust us. So, Amie, you've been following this very closely. What's your prediction on when journalists will get the vaccine? Are we essential workers, priority population, or in that other category?
Oh my gosh. I would hope we're above household pets at this point. If I can get one before my cat, that would be great. Yeah. I mean, the good thing, and I don't know if this is true for you guys, the good thing for me from working from home is that a lot of what I do can be done via Zoom or via phone. And so I'm sort of able to stay in my bubble, except for, there are times when we need to go out and be on the scene of things. And so that does put us at a little bit higher risk. But at the same time, I've, every time I've gone out, I've been able to, wear a mask. I've, asked other people to wear a mask. So I think that there rightly probably should be a lot more people ahead of us, unfortunately. But again, just above the pets, anywhere above there, that'd be fine.
Are you hearing from anti-vaxxers, or are they just quietly lining up and rolling up their sleeves?
Well, I was on site of the Unity Point vaccinations yesterday, and the chief medical officer, who's also a practicing physician, was one of the first to get his shot. And, I asked him, are these aren't mandatory, obviously, but how is the feeling around here? Are people signing up for this? And he's like, we've actually got a really good percentage of people, at least 80% of people want to get the shot. And you're just like, 80, that seems pretty low for healthcare providers. And he said nationally, it's 50 to 60%. And that's among people that are working with COVID-19 patients every single day. So it's just, it's definitely possible that, an anti-vax movement will, decline to get the shot. It's also possible that there's a lot of people on the fence. And I think that there's more of those people that just want to sort of see those first shots come out and see how that goes and hear from people getting those shots and sort of just be reassured. And so that's sort of where I see our job is right now, is reassuring those people.
Well, Mike Pence got his shot Friday morning, and apparently Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi are getting their shots sometime next week. So I guess maybe that will diminish that will diminish the political argument against getting the vaccine. So perhaps that will help. It also seems to me that, a lot of the opposition to the vaccination isn't coming from anti-vaxxers, but coming from sort of the MAGA crowd. So maybe seeing Mike Pence get his vaccination will help, ease their fears and concerns about the microchips and other things that the government is putting in there.
Have you seen that meme with Bill Gates sitting at the folding table with the sign that says, "You don't deserve to be microchipped, change my mind"?
All right, moving along here. On the heels of our discussion last week about the sandforgovernor.com domain name being registered, Bleeding Heartland reports that State Auditor Rob Sand in a Ask Me Anything session this week has not ruled out a bid for governor or U.S. Senator or re-election as state auditor. Sand told Laura Balin that for now he's just being a regular Iowan, quote, enjoying the holidays, deer hunting season, and his current job. He was one of the headliners at Progress Iowa's holiday event this week, and I received an email from former Lieutenant Governor Sally Peterson asking for money on his behalf, simply saying that he will be on the ballot in 2022. Is he toying with us, Todd?
Oh, this is kind of the normal hard to get period of the candidate courtship ritual. So he is kind of hinting that he might run for something else, or maybe he'll just keep his job. And for now, he's just being the best deer hunter he can be, and that's that's what he wants to do. So it's, I mean, this is as I say, fairly typical in this early period, and he'll probably show up at a lot of different Democratic functions, at least virtually or in person, and sort of gauge what sort of enthusiasm he gets and go from there.
And Erin tells us he's getting acneforgovernor.com vibes. Would I was lone Democratic member of Congress give up that seat and run for governor, Erin?
Yeah, I mean, that would be, I've had that same thought. That would be maybe the most dangerous thing, politically speaking, for the party anyways, if Cindy Axne did that. I mean, she has won that district twice, but just barely both times. They've both been close races over Republican David Young. Now, that said, who knows what the next election will be under probably a different looking district, because we'll have redistricting here. So who knows, maybe the third actually gets a little more Democratic. I guess we'll see. But yeah, there's that threat that she runs for another office and then the Republican wins that seat back, and all of a sudden Democrats are a big offer in the congressional delegation instead of at least having just the one. But yeah, there's definite look. She hasn't said anything officially yet. It sounds like I was just talking to Dave Price from WHO TV here in Des Moines. He's got Cindy Axne on his show this weekend, I believe, and it sounds like she's, as expected, not ready to commit to anything yet. But you read the tea leaves and you can see that she has interest. Is she going to pull the trigger and run for governor? Who knows? But when a member of Congress issues a statement immediately reacting to a state-specific issue, as Cindy Axne did this week, right after Governor Reynolds announced that she is loosening some of the COVID restrictions. I mean, that has nothing to do with Cindy Axne's job as Congresswoman of the 3rd District. That's one of those flags that you see that it's someone that's kind of paying attention to and wanting to be in the conversation on state-level issues. That's where that acneforgovernor.com vibe comes from.
There's also some suggestions that she could might be encouraged to run for U.S. Senate in 2022. And of course, all the same qualifiers that Erin just mentioned would apply to that. But I think it's probably worth pointing out, as Republicans I'm sure will, that Axne already has someone voting for her in Congress. So maybe she could do both jobs, serve in Congress and be governor at the same time.
The proxy vote. But that is a good point, James. And that's going to dominate a lot of this discussion until the fields start to form up, is that there's two big races and the same thing with Rob Sand, the Senate race and the governor race that Democrats are going to have to figure out, A, if they're going to run at all, and B, which one they want to run for. And we didn't even add in with Rob Sand that if Tom Miller retires, he could run for Attorney General as well.
He could. And if he does, we'll talk about it on a future edition of On Iowa Politics. I hope today's edition was worth your time. If you like it, tell a friend and subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you find your podcast. Send your fan mail to podcast@thegazette.com. You can find us on the home pages of the Quad City Times, Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. William Elliott Witmore will take us out. And if you know an Iowa band or musician who should be on our show, send us a sound file and subscribe to On Iowa Politics. For Bret, Amie, Tom, Erin, Todd, and our producer, Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Stay well.
Saturday night bonanzas are known from here to Kansas as being the thing to do. We like to pass around that shine, get everybody feeling fine, drinking that good old South Lee County brew. Oh, put it to your lips and take a little nip. Oh, you know your belly's wrong when you can't feel your tongue, and all you did was take a little sip. Oh, tip back the jar. So good so far, and we'll drink until we don't know what to do. Oh, we'll hoop and we'll holler, we'll take another swallow of that good old South Lee County brew. Another batch will be done soon, and we'll be howling at the moon. What tomorrow brings, I haven't got a clue. All I know is tonight I'll be feeling alright with my bottle of South Lee County brew. Oh, put it to your lips and take a little nip. Oh, you know your belly's wrong when you can't feel your tongue, and all you did was take a little sip. Oh, tip back the jar. So good so far, and we'll drink until we don't know what to do. Oh, we'll hoop and we'll holler, we'll take another swallow of that good old South Lee County brew. Some folks say that the jar's half empty. Some folks say that the jar's half full. And some folks like me don't give a damn as long as I get another pull. Oh, tip back the jar. So good so far, and we'll drink until we don't know what to do. Oh, we'll hoop and we'll holler, we'll take another swallow of that good old South Lee County brew. Oh, we'll dance a little jig and we'll take another swig of that good old South Lee County brew.